that name, whenever I say the name, it fills me up with joy
Mm.
and a sense of empowerment. This is just coming off the top of my head. And now I'm getting a little teary eyed because of all the amazing, my mom wouldn't like me saying stuff that this man has done in his life, but he has been such a force behind helping others and having others be able to help themselves. He's an activist, a communicator, he's a photographer. Ray Bradford. Hello, Ray.
Hi, David.
There he is. So, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. It's a beautiful summer day here. We're blessed, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, you have given so much. You have one of the biggest hearts. What made you become an activist?
Uh, Necessity, really. Um, Necessity in wanting to, as they say, be the change that you want to see in the world. Um, I didn't start out as an activist in Chicago. That's where I'm from. I was a full-time actor, model, waiter, and then blessed to be a full-time actor, doing a lot of industrials, program hosting on TV, commercial work. But this was the 80s, and it was a time to, in trying to break into episodics or pilots or movies of the week that could come to Chicago, because Chicago was all of a sudden a hot destination. Um, it was still the time where Hispanics or Latinos were kind of a hot property, seen primarily as the stereotypes. If you want to look at it from a stereotypical hierarchical, a negative point of view, we started becoming taking the roles that African Americans had been playing, the prostitutes, the hookers, the criminals, the gang members, the gang bangers, and stuff like that. And while as an actor, I feel like I could play it. I mean, look at me. I don't think I'm a gangbanger type, though I wore a bandana and let my hair down. And so it was that inner struggle of like, I really want to be more than this. And so I went to my union at that time. I was a member of all three, but primarily AFTRA in terms of a lot of the industrial work and commercial work. And I wanted to see what they could do, primarily and most specifically because I was being asked to translate copy for commercials into Spanish in order to be able to audition for Spanish language commercials. And something hit me. Nowadays, you can't do that. You've got the right to negotiate on your behalf. Back then, it was like, as an actor, you want the job. Uh, I'm Spanish, but I grew up in Chicago. I can understand Spanish, but creating a language in your head cognitively is very different. And then when you're translating it so it's legible for the clients who are Spanish and an audience who is Spanish,
Right.
I remember it was for a McDonald's commercial and it was trying to translate "You deserve a break today." And I'm sure what I said in Spanish was something like "I'm gonna kill you" or "I'm gonna smack you into her" or something like that. And I just thought it was unfair. And I went to my union and they said, "Well, there's nothing in the contract, but we're coming up to renegotiating the commercials contract. Why don't we work with you to draft some language?" And that was my first inkling of the fact that not only, if you want something to change, ask yourself, what are you doing yourself to be part of that change? But also the concept, the real important concept that a union is the individual. The union, when you're a union member, is not some entity out there. You are the union.
Mm.
If you want something to change, what can you do to help make it change? Who can you contact? What committee can you be a part of? If you're too busy to be a committee, at least know who to call, when are the contracts up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Little did I know that that sparked something inside of me, and that started a trajectory in me from 1984 on up to becoming union president of AFTRA for 6 terms in Chicago, second national vice president of AFTRA, and then um, Life had other plans for me, just as I was stepping away in 1999. AFTRA, unlike SAG, did not have an EEO department, did not have a diversity department. It was really the partnership between activist members like myself and others, amazingly talented people, um, and staff that also had other responsibilities, but they were assigned to also work with us. And we did some great things. But throughout the years, we wanted a position, and we're always told it's not the right time, it's not the right time. And so the good thing when you rise up through the ranks of the union as a member activist, you start becoming part of all the important committees, National Administrative Committee or Executive Committee, National Finance Committee. And in 1999, it got to a point where I told the committee in plenary session, I said, look, I think the time is right. I know we have the money. If not now, when was the mantra. And I helped draft the resolution in 1999, presented it to the convention. It was approved, directing the national executive director to create the position and hire somebody. And I was stepping away to do something else. And people were coming up, as they were coming up to me saying, this is you, this is you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? People were going up to the national executive director saying, you'd be a fool not to consider Ray. And I took a deep breath and realized it was one of those moments in life that can happen either professionally or personally or whatever. It's when you feel like you are in that vortex of a shift in your life that is really a lot bigger than you. And I knew that this was something that I wanted to do.
Mm.
And I started the conversation. And in 1999, I moved to New York and became AFTRA's first national director of equal employment opportunities. And with merger in 2012, it's last because then it was SAG-AFTRA.
Right.
So I guess that's my little asterisk footnote in my bio after I die.
Uh,
AFTRA's first and only. So that's it. You never quite know when things are going to present themselves into your life. And in any aspect, my belief and prayer now in my life in every aspect is to just I pray for the clarity to hear what I call that still small voice that is kind of guiding you in this direction or that direction that sometimes, many times, does not come at you full face. It
mm.
sometimes comes from a whisper or something in a magazine or a song or somebody mentions something and it resonates something inside of yourself and you start moving in a particular direction. So that's long story.
No, it's an amazing story, and thank God. The things that are going through my mind too is number one, thank God that you did go that way, that you listened to those little voices, big voices, whispers, um, and you took the path that you did because it was better for everyone. And what it seems like you got joy from it. Um,
Yeah.
the questions too, though, because I know that there was a time in my life that acting was number one. I had to be an actor, or I had to be on stage, or this or that and the other. And I went through that kind of feeling that you're talking about, but in a different way. And now I'm teaching more, and I'm more behind the scenes. What would you tell the people who are so focused on the acting, but they have this little voice that says, you know what about this? What about this?
It depends on what I would tell them, which is really for any aspect of life, really, whether it's professional, career, or personal relationships, or just your own self worth and self being, is to find those moments. I'm a big practitioner for meditation and just, I mean, really, truly, my goal at any moment of my life, my primary focus is to do what I need to do in the whirligig of life, to just find those moments to be still, stay quiet, and to just listen and sense for whenever something is moving me in a particular direction. It doesn't happen all the time,
Right.
obviously. Sometimes it's just wonderful to just thank thank the universe, thank whatever higher power you have inside for the blessings in life or where you are at that moment and stuff.
Right.
So what I would tell people who are currently, because I know that you deal with a lot of students, a lot of people who are either early in their profession, thinking about being in the profession or in the profession, and still experiencing a lot of challenges for access to work and inclusion, is to just continue in the craft. But if you start feeling something, um, talk to people, talk to friends who you trust, share those thoughts. Not all friends are the kind. Friends don't all come in one modality, so to speak. But we each hopefully have those kinds of friends that you can just really share whatever's on your mind and know that it's going to be taken without judgment,
Mm.
and who are really there to do more listening than to always engage you. And sometimes I'm a firm believer that when you're talking to friends for those kinds of conversations, you're really talking to yourself as well.
Mm.
Because at a certain point, when you start feeling this kind of push or pull, you got to get it out of your head. And one of the ways to get it out of the head is either writing, journaling, because the mind moves so much faster than the hand, or typing. Bring it down in speed and start doing it. Start writing, start typing on the computer, start looking at what your thoughts have translated onto paper, or talking with friends. And you hear yourself. And sometimes you realize, that was a flight of fancy. I always wanted to fly a plane. I loved flying.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a kid, I just when there's a if I'm truly like squirrel, squirrel. If I'm engaged talking with you somewhere and there's a plane going overhead, I'll be like, okay, Ray, come back. I'm just like that. And I took a little class back in Chicago, and it really sparked something in me. But then my life just didn't. First of all, it's very expensive, but if you really want to do something, you can try to save. And I mention this because there are those things that speak to you that are just kind of little little things that kind of float into our consciousness and then are gone, or just flights of fancy that aren't necessarily meant to firmly move you in that direction. Sometimes they're just things that you like, that you appreciate, either in other people or in life. But those things that may, in retrospect, have been those voices or incidents that moved you in a major direction in your life, hopefully you'll know when you are thinking about it back then that there's a different kind of resonance in your heart and your head or something. And if you're not quite sure what that is, talk with a friend, write it down, meditate without judgment.
Yeah.
And I say that because you don't want to hold on to. There's a Buddhist, I believe it's a Buddhist saying, is I come to life like an empty rice bowl. And that means it's like I come to life with a rice bowl that is not full. It is not so overbrimming that there is no room for newness, for new adventures to fill it. Come to life with an empty rice bowl and gather the rice that is around you. And that's how I see it. Even now in my retired life
Mm.
and stuff, there's still so much I want to do, so much we want to do, Terry and I, my husband and I.
Yeah.
But we also know that we have elderly parents. We're at a point in life where it's about trimming, 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 and really focusing on those things that you really want to do while you still have health, while you still have time, while you still have money. And so the exercise works at this point in life as much as the younger years.
Right. How I feel like I'm in a Zen class right now on how to,
We are.
you know, what about the line in trusting in yourself? How do you know when to trust in yourself?
Well, I think again, you have to be in any situation, and let me just use as an example. If you're asking, how do you know to trust yourself when you want to make a decision to move in a particular direction in life, in a career, or something like that? Um, I'm a firm believer that the heart knows, the spirit knows, and as you can tell, I'm a my guiding principle is very universal,
Mm.
very science of mind, very just the beliefs of all ages, teachers, principles, and I take the best of them. And one of the principles is that is that I believe that there are, not that the future is already written in stone. I don't believe that. But I do believe that there is a journey that we're on that on some level is kind of already, kind of, if we call it our dharma,
Mm,
already kind of out there for us. And our responsibility is to do what we need to do, in life, stretch ourselves, do this, do that, do sports, do reading, blah, 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 blah. Because when you start touching on those areas that are really kind of more on your life purpose, either for a whole life or this period of your life, there's a certain resonance that happens. It's like when you hear a song for the first time and you just go, God, I really like that. You could hear 100 songs, but you won't have that reaction for every single song. It's kind of like that. It's so in terms of trusting yourself, I would say very simply, primally, what I do is I just meditate and I just stay quiet and clear my mind. I clear my mind and then I focus on whatever it is I am questioning or whatever road I'm considering. And then I really immerse myself in there. I visualize what it's like to be in there, what it's like to be in the moment. Say, for example, moving to a particular city, say Seattle. What
yeah.
would it be like? I do my homework, but then I really, if I've done my homework and I've done the finances and I've done this, you know, it is a major life change. So I would meditate and I would visualize and I would really see myself in that situation. The
Mm,
sights, the smells, the sounds, the people, and everything. And then I become aware of how I feel right here in my chest, whether that center is. Is there resistance to that? Is it ease? Is there a joy that awakens? Do you feel all of a sudden the goosebumps on your arms? Those are signs that this is something you should pay attention to. This is something you should trust.
mm,
Now, I'm not saying to like just jump blindly because there's a balance between the universal principles of faith and this and that, and the fact that we live in a material world. And
mm.
I'm a material girl. No, I just couldn't let that go by.
No, thank God.
I mean, there's a balance that you have to do. I really believe that, and I've seen examples of it in my life through different teachers, whether it's Louise Hay or Marianne Williamson or Sonia Choquette, who lives in France, who's written several books, or a wonderful book for anybody who's doing recovery work or therapy work, a book by Debbie Ford called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. It focuses on a lot of Jungian principle shadow work because we are basically living our lives. We are living the stories of our lives,
Mhm.
and many of those stories were written when we were little children, either to protect ourselves, or let's say I was a fat little kid, and so the script that I wrote was one of overarching confidence, of
Mm,
kind of a defense that I wrote. Well, you live that script long enough, and you start developing a personality that is borderline or has stepped over into arrogance, into defensiveness, and stuff like that. And you forget. So you're living the story, but you forget that it's a story. You don't even know that you're living a story. It's just your life.
yeah.
When in fact, you're living a story whose genesis was a particular situation when you were a child. And that's the work. Discovering that is the work of therapy. There's also the work of shadow work. And I would recommend to anybody who's doing that kind of work, either in 12-step program or therapy or something, Debbie Ford's The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. It was amazingly influential in my life to not only begin discovering the sources of the stories of how I lived a life that really separated me, the spirit of me, into this person out there that was defensive and braggadocio, very, very kind of living the world loudly, but I didn't balance it with living with myself in a quiet place, until I did therapy and I did 12 step and I discovered those. And so in discovering those instances in childhood, you bless it, you release it, you forgive yourself, and then you start rewriting the story, because the capability that we all have as humans is that we have choice.
Mm.
We are not powerless over our stories. We can rewrite the story. And if it gets too tough to do it by yourself, lean on some friends.
Well,
Some
and
account.
hearing this too, it shows how you took your work throughout the years, how you gave of yourself and got back through your work. I mean, you have like, I mean, you listed a few of the things, but I mean, a director of programs for entertainment media for GLAD, the director of policy and diversity advocacy for SAG-AFTRA. There's so, you know, the list goes on. What, I mean, you've done so much in your life. If I threw out right now, what are you most proud of? What would come to mind?
I am going with what we're talking about. I am glad that I listened to that voice in 1999 that was presented to me to make a major career change.
Mm.
And I never thought that I would be a staff person for the union. And I never thought that my life would be one in civil rights in
Mm.
the entertainment industry. I just wanted to be a professional working actor. And by that point, I was making a good living being a program host. I'd given up the dream of being a stage actor or an episodic actor. I found that my skills were really more as a communicator
Yeah.
on camera, and I was good at it, and I am good at it. And so I never thought that I'd be doing that. But if I would bless and be grateful for one moment, it would be that pivotal moment in my life in 1999 that something just changed. And it was, again, I didn't know, in using the examples that we've just been talking, how do you trust yourself? I just knew that there was a huge shift going on. And I remember going back to my hotel room because it happened at convention and shutting the door. And it was like a movie scene, David. It was like you step into the door and you shut the hotel door behind you and you press your back to it and you breathe and you go, what is happening?
Yeah.
Because I definitely felt like something is happening. And I remember going, self, would you want that job? Self, yes, I would. And I really kind of like brought it down to that, and I thought, okay, then what do I need to do to advance this? And so I am grateful that my modus operandi in my past, which was when presented with big things that may have been right for me, but my ego, my protective ego, that little voice inside of me that was very destructive, that would go, nah, you're no good for this. What would people think? You don't, no, give it to somebody else and stuff like that. That voice was very strong with me until I went into recovery and into therapy. And it just led me into, as successful as I was, and that's the dichotomy. It's like I find that, when you're at that point in your life where you need a change, a big change. It's like the spiritual 2x4. Sometimes it taps you on the shoulder, and if you don't listen, eventually it's going to whoop you upside the head. But it's going to demand your attention because it is not the way you should be living your life. Either it will manifest in stress, blood pressure, or cancer, or some other thing, or major depression and suicide, unless you listen and you realize that something just is not right. And if it's too tough, then reach out to friends, go to counseling or whatever. And so I trust that in spite of all that,
Mm.
I listened to my better angels that were tapping me big time on the shoulder saying, there is a change happening in your life. It is time for you to use the tools in a different way and do it. And so when friends, especially in the first year after I moved to New York and worked for the union, would ask me, well, do you miss being active? Do you miss being an actor?
Yeah.
I would say, no, not really, because I stopped considering myself an actor years ago and really more a communicator and a good communicator. And what I'm doing now is I'm using my tools as a communicator and creating the message, not speaking somebody else's message, whether it was for a product or whatever. I'm creating a message, and that message has greater import than a product
Yeah.
because it is about people's lives, people with disabilities, minorities, LGBT people who want to have, one, jobs in the industry, want to not have to face discrimination and stereotyping and stuff like that, and look to the union and look to people for help. Well, now I was in a position to start using my tools to do it and in a creative way. And so I trust. I trust that moment that spoke to me, and I trust that I put my fears aside and stepped into the unknown. Yeah.
Now, I'm getting a free therapy session right now because
So am I.
I'm taking this all in, and it feels like it's like, you know, I'm identifying with certain things in my life that I went, oh yeah, that was a sign, wasn't it? And this other, thank God I'm still here after the heart incident, which I call it a heart healing, which
Hmm.
is an interesting way to put it.
I'm
Um,
glad you're here too, David.
uh, yes, thank you. I'm glad we're both here.
Yeah.
I was one of the words that I wrote down here also. One word that stuck out to me, and when I read your bio, was that you're, and these aren't the exact words, but you're happily busy and retired. So you're retired, but you're being very busy. What is that busy, and what does retirement mean to you?
Retired is very different than what I thought, and probably what most people who are still on the other side of retirement is. Sometimes people think it's, and maybe for some, it's finally lounging by the deck or this and that. And I find that in many ways I'm busier now than I was before, but it is all by choice.
Hmm.
You know, I choose what I do. I didn't plan on retiring. I was, after all the years, after 13 years at the unions living down here, I live in Long Beach. I used to live in San Pedro. And to commute, do that commute in the morning and then back, spending 4 hours total in the car every day, was fine when I moved here from New York. And I was, I relocated, same position after New York, after in Los Angeles and stuff, and through all of that, and it was fine because the energy kept me going. And then merger happened, and then a year later I left the unions, and then a year after that I was offered the position at Glad, and their building is just like 4 doors down on on Wilshire, so it was that same commute again. And while it may have been the same commute and the same type of work, we are different beings from moment to moment and from year to year. And 14, 15 years later, uh, doing a 4 hour commute every day really takes a toll on you. At
Um,
that point, I was married. I am married. And so, to get up really, really early and leave before the sun comes up to get
four
to the office
hours.
early. I'm sorry, what?
You said 4 hour commute.
Yeah, because when you're down here, there's really no way to avoid the 110 or the 405. I mean, it is what it is. And
Right.
La Brea and Fairfax and all that, it just is what it is. And in the evening, it's like, how close to rush hour are you going to be, or are you going to wait? And the more you wait, the later you get home, and then you get home, and then you spend an hour, and then you go back to bed. And it takes a toll, not just on yourself, but the relationship. And also, I found that I wasn't getting as much joy doing what I was doing, using all of my skill sets in the position that I was at Glad, because there was more of a responsibility to do blogs and to tweet this, to tweet that, to follow social media and this and that. And while I understand the shift in how we as a culture get our information and share our information. And if images are powerful, or the lack of being seen is powerful in movies or TVs, it is just as powerful on your handheld device or your laptop and stuff. So it's really all about images. And I understand the importance of that. But it just didn't speak to me. And I was on a trip introducing the principles of media monitoring that GLAD uses to a new group of activists in Australia, in Melbourne and in Sydney. And I vacationed for a week before that in New Zealand, and New Zealand is an amazing place. And I went there and I just drove for a week from the North Island to the South, and I was surrounded by so much beauty. And the very first day that I was in my car, my heart space just opened up because it was so beautiful. And I started tearing up, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? And I realized that it had been quite a while since I felt that kind of just expansive joy that doesn't have to come from a car ride in New Zealand. It can happen when you're walking down the street and you see the jacaranda trees in bloom, or you see a friend you haven't seen. It's just that joy that for almost 2 years I had just been so busy and so busy and in the car for 2 hours each direction and work, 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 work,
Yeah.
that I realized I called Terry from Queenstown, New Zealand, and I just shared with him what I had been thinking, and because it's a family decision, and he supported me. He said, "I just want my husband back."
Yeah.
And so I that kind of put it all in context. And I came back and retired and quit after 4 weeks, gave my notice, and then also realized that, do I really want to go back into the world and start from scratch again? And at an age in an industry where they value youth on both sides of the camera, and do I really want to do that, or do I want to start doing what I want to do on a personal freelance basis with my photography or my writing or with my church, And I chose the latter. And
Mm-hmm.
and again, as far as trusting your decisions, I just knew when I made that decision, there was just a sense of freedom that I felt. Now, not everybody can do that, and I don't want to, say that everybody can do that, because there are monetary influences to that too. You need security. You have to live in the world,
Right.
and I'm blessed that we are secure in our house and in our finances. So for me, it was just the right time to do. So I fill my life now. I'm very active in our church. It's a center for spiritual living called Namaste here in Long Beach. I spent 3 years on the board at a very tumultuous time. Now I'm director of their marketing team. So talk about Twitter and Instagram and all this stuff. I'm back on it, but the images that I'm creating and the messages that I'm sharing are inspirational, and talk about our services or the different things. So it fills me, and again, I hope it touches people as well. So I'm hoping to make a difference there too. I'm back to reading a lot. I used to read a lot when in my life in New York. And I found when I moved here, I was always behind the car. And I just went from a book a month to a book a year, if that. And I realized that it's not going to happen on its own. I have to dedicate some time. So I'm back to like a book a month, and I'm really enjoying that time. And also taking care of our household. I'm retired, but Terry telecommutes for his job, so he's always here. So anything that I can do in our life to make our home life easier, preparing dinners. I love to cook. He loves to eat, so it's a wonderful system together.
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah.
So that and exercise, because the older you get, the body's metabolism isn't quite as quick as it used
Yeah.
to be, and so I'm always monitoring that. And also, finally, I'm blessed that my parents. I mentioned before we started that my mom was turning 94 in 2 weeks. Well, my dad is right there too, and they both live in an assisted living facility outside of Chicago, where I'm from, and they're both healthy, smart, politically savvy. They are just amazing, and so any opportunity that I have, especially now post COVID, um, I'm there. I'm
Mm.
there. And so that's my time is full. My time is full, and it's a wonderful blessing. You know.
Well, it's so nice to take care of yourself. So a lot of times we don't take care of ourselves, and then we also have the quote family and the friends. I mean, you even mentioned when we talked before in email land that there were so many people that you worked with that it's I mean, you're in a way, I always think of you as a beacon of this community, but there's so many others that you were talking about
Absolutely.
that you enjoyed working with, you know.
Yeah. Let me jump in.
Yes.
There's some names that people may not be familiar with. There's Are these just pictures, or did you pull these people up?
Well, I
Because I've seen you in action before, David.
have.
Oh my God.
Hello.
There's trouble now.
uh,